If you are placing walls one by one in Windrose, stop it. I mean it. Stop it right now. There's actually a building system in this game that a lot of people overlook. So starting things off, I want to talk about the Q menu. This is very, very much so overlooked. I see a lot of players when they're building never even open it up. So let's talk about it here. If you press Q on your keyboard, you've got a couple of different options. Starting at the very first top here, it actually brings us into the degree when it comes to rotating items. By default here, it is set to 30 degrees, but you can actually go down to 15. You can increase to 45 or even increase to 60 degrees. And this is actually huge when it comes to placing individual items. It allows you to rotate decorations, rotate walls, and just really create your own custom pieces based on utilizing the different degrees and mixing and matching them. Same thing goes here for the next one, and that next one is turning snapping on or off. By pressing P on your keyboard, it will basically give you the ability to have the item snap in whatever rotation or angle that you have it in, or not snap and actually free place the item. When it comes to building in the game, I highly recommend mixing and matching the two. I think it makes a massive difference and a huge upgrade for when you are trying to place something and the degree options that it has just isn't quite working out. You can actually swap the snapping, turning it off. It will then allow you to freely place it exactly how you wish. And lastly here for this section brings us to the zoom out camera mode. Again, this is one that I see a lot of people not using for some reason or sleeping on, and this actually gives you a much better view. It basically gets rid of the player in the dead center of your screen, taking up a lot of screen real estate when you're trying to place something and can't see. It gives you a more zoomed out view. It allows you to be able to see up close and personal for doing roofs or doing edging or basically anything like that. It's a really nice handy tool to take advantage of when you're building your full-on base. Now, next up, we've got the drag and auto build feature. Now, this one is funny. I actually had a person join my live stream say they spent over 100 hours in Windrose and built an entire pirate village and didn't even know this existed. That means, yeah, they placed every single wall individually, which I feel terrible for them. But nevertheless, when you are placing an item, you have an ability to press and hold down on the left mouse button, right? When you press and hold it down, before you let go and it places that wall, in this example, you can see the three green rectangles around the piece. You can go left or right. Continuously going right while still holding down the mouse button will show you that you can place multiple walls. You can also go up from here and go back the other direction. You can go back and forth. Again, it makes it very nice and very handy to be able to place multiple of the same item without having to click and spam click over and over again to place every single wall individually. And this not only just works for walls, this works for walls, floors, foundations, fences. I mean, basically anything that tiles, it works for. And not only will this drastically save you time when it comes to your builds, but also once you know this, you're never going back to placing walls individually. Now, diving into the next tip brings us to unlocking recipes in Windrose. I've heard it a bunch throughout the community for some reason. People have made public statements that they feel like the building that is offered in the game is very basic and very simple, and there's not really a lot there. I would say by default that is very much true. However, the game is designed to unlock more recipes by a couple of different ways. The first one being, through doing quests in the game, whether it's main quest or a side quest, and even doing the X marks the spot treasure maps from Blackbeard, finding these chests or digging them up will all give you additional recipes, right? It's not really sure which recipe is placed where or how you're going to uncover them, but you will uncover a bunch via those methods. The second method, and honestly the more player controlled method, brings us to buying the recipes directly from NPCs in Tortuga. You can access their inventory and you can see what their wares are. If you scroll down to the bottom, you can see each individual faction have a bunch of building sets and building pieces. You can see once you hover over one of them, all of the pieces that they unlock, and this is a huge thing that every player needs to do over time, eventually unlocking all of them, and start off by picking and choosing the ones that you think you would want the most, but then obviously eventually unlocking all of them because it really massively expands the building options that you have inside of the game. Now, next up brings us into custom furniture pieces. Now, this one's a little bit different and a little bit hard to explain sometimes because I can't just give you, all of the pieces and stuff off the top of my head, but what I can do is I can show you some examples of pieces that I have built that are not in the game, right? You can't find these pieces anywhere. They don't exist. I've just simply created them based out of the building materials that we have available to us inside of the game. And this is something that you can easily do yourself. It's going to take a lot of practice to probably get to that point. But here's some examples. The first one I have is going to be this lovely little bookshelf that is inside of my room. Again, this is all built out of building pieces. I can show you basically how I did it. I utilized the mahogany small walls. I built that up. I put a big, wall on the backside to kind of close off the backside of the cabinet. I ended up putting some shelves going across. After doing all of that, I can frame it in here with a couple of beams. Additionally, the next thing to do at this point, if you like the way it looks, is to fill it, right? To add things on the shelving to make it look more realistic. Again, go ahead and placing those items on top. You can do whatever you want, mix and match different things, whether it's books or a lantern or, pots and pans or bowls, you name it here, fill it into whatever decorations you have. Again, you'll have more or less according to what you've unlocked inside of the game. But either way, as you can see, boom, we got a really nice little bookshelf here. Next one up that I've loved that a lot of people have pointed out is my forge, right? Or my little fire, the cozy fire that I've created. Again, there's a couple of different ways to do this, but the one that I've done is I basically make 4 walls here with these stone slabs. Again, it's a building piece that you unlock from buying from a vendor in Tortuga. Then I've just placed the standard torch on the inside, a little bit lower, so the fire kind of still sticks out the very top above the walls. Once I do that, I turn around, turn off snapping, get one of these stick kind of pillars, place it down on the inside, and there you go. It looks like you have a campfire or a nice little forge fire. I guess the whole premise here behind the custom furniture is more so about utilizing the building pieces that you have in creative ways to create custom furniture pieces that don't really exist in the game that fits whatever build you're trying to go for. Now, next up, I want to just kind of go over some general building motivation, advice, tips and tricks, stuff. Start off with a rough shape, whether it's a L shape or a U shape or, an octagon shape or, just even a simple square at this point. The next thing you want to do at that point is I would break it up into sections. Section off like the foyer, right? The entrance to your building. What's it going to look like? How do you want it to feel? Start there. Start piecing things together. Start throwing some items out there. See what it looks like. The nice part about Windrose is when you break the items down, you actually get the resources back, so you're not penalized for experimenting. The next tip I have for you relates to turning snapping on or off. I think this is a big one that a lot of people underestimate. They either try to stick to everything snapping because that's just what they're used to in other games, or potentially because it just, they make sure that nothing gets misplaced or out of line. The problem is it's also very limiting. So you then don't have in between snap points. You don't really have any flexibility to, rotate a certain way or to place something a certain direction if you're not turning off the free placement. And I think that that's where you can add a lot of character by turning things off to free placement, especially when it comes to like placing docks that are imperfect or have imperfections, or walls, being half, tethered, or, holes in areas. Again, making things just feel more realistic adds a lot by changing and mixing and matching snapping versus, free placement options. Now, the next tip that I have for you brings us to pillars and support beams that aren't used for structure, right? And what I mean by that is I see a lot of people underutilizing the beams and pillars in the game because they're under the assumption, or they feel like for whatever reason, that they only need to use it when there is a structural issue with the build. And that is just simply not the case here. And honestly, in my opinion, I would recommend utilizing them for multiple reasons. One, for visual appeal, right? Like you can see a beam, it looks really cool, it adds texture, it adds character, it adds to the storyline. And the same thing goes for utilizing them for framing items, right? Maybe you're framing a wall, you're either on the outside or the inside, or framing a crate, or framing a piece of furniture that you're making that's custom. Again, all of these things I think dramatically increase the design or layout of your build and adds a lot more character versus it just looking flat and square or potentially unrealistic. And the last tip that I have for you here brings us to imperfection is actually tells a better story than perfection does. And the reason why I'm bringing this one up is I feel like a lot of people run into a issue with their brain wanting to place things in symmetry. They want to place a bowl here, so that bowl needs to be here but just flopped, or because they build a room on the right side, they need to build a room on the left side. And that's just simply not the case. That's not realistic, right? When it comes to building things, especially these micro builds, or the detail aspect of a build or base that you're trying to do, honestly, I would recommend being imperfect with it. So meaning placing a cup and placing a bowl here for this person's plate on their table. This one, maybe turning the plate a little bit, right? Maybe taking the cup and separating it a little bit farther, right? Maybe a little bit farther forward or backwards, or maybe even removing the cup altogether, maybe adding a second bowl, you name it, right? I could go on and on about the different examples, but I feel like a lot of people get in this, symmetry trap versus just randomly placing items, and kind of adding that more imperfect, tone to it really opens up and tells a better story compared to placing things down in a pattern or trying to match it across both ends. The building system in Windrose is a lot deeper than people let on and what the game even tells you. As I mentioned several times in this video, I think it really just boils down to players getting in the game, unlocking all of the recipes, getting access to all of these things that they can build, but then not only that, not being afraid to experiment, right? Mixing and matching different items together, utilizing building pieces, building your own custom furniture and, custom items out of the building pieces that they're not typically meant to be used for or potentially used for. I think all of those things are really going to spice up your build and make it a lot easier for you to start thinking more outside of the box when it comes to, building things, again, outside of a square cube. With that being said, guys, hopefully all these building tips and tricks helped you. If you guys have any additional tips or tricks, let me know down below in the comments for other players to check them out. With that being said, as always, guys, I'll see ya on the next one.